right, welcome to the Q&A. Welcome to our Q&A, monthly Q&A for real estate investing for the school community. If you want to join, if you're watching on, let's say you're watching on Instagram or one of the other social platforms, you can go to our community, go to blakeshwaney.com/community, join that, and you can find everything up at the top. And you'll be good to go. So go ahead and join now. Again, the way that this works is I'm going to go through all your questions. You ask me whatever questions you want, and I'll get you an answer. And we will get you taken care of. The best way to do that ahead of time, especially if you can't come to the calls, let's say you're at work and you're still slaving away at the old 9 to 5, but you still want to get your questions answered. Submit them via blakeshwaney.com/ask. And we will get you taken care of. I'll make sure that you get an answer. But the VIPs are the people that are on the call. So if you got a question on the call, just send it over in the chat, and we will get you taken care of. I've got some gifts for you guys today as a thank you for coming. So as you got questions, go ahead and send them over. For those of you that aren't familiar with me, my name is Blake Schwaney, real estate investor, entrepreneur, and coach. I built a multi-million dollar portfolio in 18 months, retired from my W-2, my six-figure W-2 in 2 years, and self-made millionaire in less than five. And you can do it too. It is not as hard as you might think. It's more of a science than it is an art. And in fact, if you want to learn exactly how to do it, I'm hosting a masterclass tomorrow. And that masterclass is I'm going through the exact process that you would need to be able to build your own portfolio and get your first property in less than 90 days. So build a portfolio, whether you got no money, whether you live in a terrible market, whether you have no expertise. All of those things were true about me when I started. So if you're interested in that, in fact, I will send over the registration link for that, and you can here, boom. I'll send over that registration link. For those of you that attend that masterclass, I have a few gifts for you. And those gifts, one of them is my lender vault. So that's taken years and years to curate this lender vault. It's got fix and flip products, long-term financing products, lines of credit, private money brokers, just tons of people. So I'm giving that away just as a way to help you on your journey and say thank you for coming. So with that, all right, we will go ahead and hop into questions. So, all righty, let me bring up those questions. All righty. All righty. Okay. First question I've got is, how can I get a quick run at the numbers on deal analysis? Okay, so I'm assuming that your question is essentially how do I save time? Like how do I save time on not sinking all my time into deal analysis on deals that stink? And so I recommend a 3-step process for deal analysis. 1, to save you time, and 2, to allow you to focus on the most important and most valuable deals. Because this is, I specifically coach people that they've got a 9 to 5. Like they're spending all their time already doing their stuff. Like they're providing for their family. They're working, 40, 50 hours a week. So they don't have time to waste. And so this 3-step process will give you the cheat code for not wasting time. So step number 1 is make your best estimate. It's just make your best estimate. At first, it's going to stink. You're not going to be very good at it because you're a rookie. But as you continue to do this process, you'll get better at it because you get some closed loop feedback. So when you make a decision, you say, I think it's going to rent for this much. Then when you find out you're wrong, it corrects the process, right? Whether it's good or bad. So the first part is just take a guess. And the numbers that you need will change based on what strategy you're implementing. So for example, if you want to do the Burr model, you need 6 numbers. You need your core 4, and then you need your insurance and property taxes. Of course, you need the purchase price, rehab, rent, and ARV. For turnkey, you need 4 numbers. You need the purchase price, any repairs that you're going to do, rent. And I guess for turnkey, there's not really going to be any repairs, but rent, property insurance, and taxes. And so those are the numbers that you'll need whenever it comes to that point. That first step, your goal really is just put some numbers on paper. It doesn't have to be right, doesn't have to be accurate, it doesn't even have to be good. Just put some numbers on paper, because the next part is going to be refining those numbers. All right. So first, put some numbers on paper. The second one is refine those numbers, and the third is get your expert involved. So refining those numbers means actually going and running comps. The first part can take you 30 seconds. It can take you 60 seconds, but you're just doing a quick back of the napkin math. And one of my cheat codes that I would use on that front is really twofold. One is answering the question, is it worth my time if I have to get my money back out on this, like a BRRRR deal? And that is, you want to be all in at 70% of ARV. So purchase plus rehab, 70% of ARV, because you've got to refinance and use 20% of that equity as your down payment to refinance. So you've got to have that margin. The other 10% is margin so that you can cover closing costs and other ancillary costs. But 70% of ARV. So what that means is if they've given you a deal that's a 50% or 50K purchase price with 20K in repairs, and they're saying it's going to be worth 100, that's 70% of ARV. And, it might work. That's the back of the napkin math. The biggest question here is, how do I estimate rehab? Like, how do I estimate rehab costs when I don't know what the heck I'm doing? The first step, I would give you a tool that is price per square foot. Just know that any tool that you use that is quick and easy is probably not very accurate. Like the Z estimate, rentometer, things like that, they're just not going to be very accurate, but they can save you time. So what I'd say on this front is your price per square foot for rehab, use $10 a square foot for a lipstick fix and $40 a square foot for an overhaul, like a complete rehab. $10 a square foot, that's just lipstick, that's paint here and there, touch-ups, but $40 a square foot is down to the studs in multiple places. You're seeing holes in the ceiling from what looked like maybe leaks or floods or something like that, exposed wiring, all boarded up windows and things like that. And then stretch everything in between based on the spectrum there. So that's what I'd say for step one is use the price per square foot to be able to get your rehab numbers. Then move on to step number two. Step number two is validating those numbers and refining them. So you don't have to do anything with purchase price, but you got to get better data better information on your ARV, your rehab, and your rent. So go actually run your comps yourself. Go look at what the market is telling you. It's called market fluency. So let the market speak to you and learn how it speaks to you. And the way that it speaks to you is what's on the market and what will people pay for it, right? If you listed your house, let's say you own your house and you listed it for $5, you're going to have lots of applications. But if you listed it for $5 billion, you're not going to have very many applications. So there's some number in between there where somebody would buy it. And so what you're going to do, you go to Zillow, you'll go to Trulia, whatever your favorite website is, and just go look at properties that are exact same as yours, and then just go find out what are they selling for if it's ARV, and what are they renting for if it's rent. I have a running comps cheat sheet that you guys can have. If it'd be helpful, it just runs through, here are the requirements for running good comps, here are the suggestions for running comps, and here are the adjustments. So let's say you have a detached garage, they have an attached garage. You have a two-car carport that's detached, they have a one-car attached garage. Right? Those adjustments, or an extra bedroom, extra bathroom, things like that, that helps you get your comps better. Then you refine those numbers, you get them accurate, and then the third step is you get your expert involved. You talk to your expert. And so who's your expert for these core numbers? Like a contractor is going to give you the expert number on rehab because they're going to give you a quote for exactly how much it's going to cost. Then on top of that, you've got for rent, you get your property manager, and for rehab, or rather for ARV, you have your agent. But I will say for insurance, if you're trying to get like questions or things like insurance and property taxes, accurate numbers, property taxes, you can check the county website. If you go to the county website and search property tax search, you can find exactly what they paid last year in property taxes. If you're looking for insurance, my recommendation, in fact, I'll send this link over, is you go to blakeswanee.com/insurance, and I partner with Obi here, and you can get a quote in 45 seconds. Open up the website to get in a quote in 45 seconds. You don't even have to use that quote. You're not bound to that quote, but that quote is available for 30 days. So if you decide, so you use that number, that number is set in stone. So you use that number for your underwriting. And then if you decide to go under contract and buy the property, you shop it around, find the cheapest insurance. But if OB gives you $100 a month for your insurance, you know that's your worst case scenario because the only reason you're going to change is because you get a better option over here with Allstate or State Farm or whatever, Geico, and it's $80 a month. Great, and then maybe you can negotiate OB down or whatever. But I would use that just as your underwriting tool to be able to get accurate insurance costs. But that's what I'd recommend for ways to save yourself time analyzing deals and still be able to spot the really good ones. The more that you do that, the better you'll get at it, and the faster you'll be able to identify and spot really good ones. Right, like you'll have so much experience with deal analysis and deal underwriting that you'll be able to quickly throw away the ones that are going to be a time suck and not be good on a good use of your time, and you'll quickly be able to identify like, oh, this one looks like a good one. I got to move on this one quickly. So that's what I'd say. That's a long answer to a short question, but um, and for those of you that are on the call, if you got a question and you actually want to like get an answer to your specific question, send it over in the chat, and I'll get you taken care of because you guys get number one priority in as far as answering questions. And you can do the same here in with Instagram or any of the other platforms that you're watching on. All right, what's the best way to set up an LLC for rentals? Here's my take. One, you don't have to have an LLC for rentals. You just don't have to. And the reason I say this is not because you shouldn't have an LLC, but because a lot of people tend to overcomplicate it. Like when they're starting their real estate investing business, they approach it as though like they're kind of scared. Like I'm starting the next Nike or Amazon, and it has to be like this big formal thing. Just take the right next step, and you could put a property under your own name, and that's fine. Now it's not scalable. After you get 10 doors, you don't have any other options unless if you're married, you can use your spouse, but property's under her name. But that problem only comes at 10 doors. That's a good problem to have. So if it's going to slow you down, just go ahead and close on a property, put it under your own name. That's fine. An LLC is just what it states. It's a liability protection, limited liability company. It limits your liability. So if you want to go ahead and set that up, that process is not hard. If you got $400 in 20 minutes, easy, totally easy to do. And heck, I'll even give you the partnership that I use with for my mastermind students. I'll send that over to you here. In fact, that's at blakeswiney.com/LLC if you want to check it out. But they will give they give people that mention my name or that are in relationship with me. They give them essentially an LLC. I don't want to say for free, but an LLC at cost to them. So they're not making any money on it. In fact, it's a loss leader. So it's state costs plus their hard costs. So, and they set it up. They do the whole fancy thing, a white glove service. They're going to get you your EIN. They're going to get you your articles of incorporation, all the documentation that you need to be able to do business in that state. They'll also give you an hour consultation, and then after they set everything up, they'll give you consultation down the road for taxes and stuff like that. They're awesome at what they do. They're really, really good at what they do. But if you wanted to set up an LLC, you can work with them. That's fine. Now, the question also comes, should I have one LLC for my properties, or should I have one LLC per property? There are different schools of thought here. I land somewhere in the middle. The philosophy for each of them is if you have one LLC, less overhead, less operational headache, but more liability exposure. If you have one LLC per property, maximum liability protection, but more operational headache. So I typically guide to one every an LLC for every 5 or so properties. The reason why you would want to have more LLCs per property is just to protect more assets. So, for example, let's say someone scrapes their finger on the fence coming into your property, one of your tenants, and they decide to sue you. And you, even at this point, you don't have to be proved liable or anything, but they talk to an attorney who's one of those sketchy, terrible people who literally all they do is they try and find people with tons of money and go sue them for random stuff. And they see that this LLC or this entity that owns these properties owns $40 million of real estate. Well, I mean, let's go. Let's just try. As opposed to they see this is the only property that they own and the property is worth $110,000. Well, there's probably not a whole lot of meat on the bone there for them. Even if you own 40 different LLCs that each own $1 million property or whatever. There's just not a whole lot of meat on the bone. So you're less likely to, one, get sued. And if you did get sued and were found liable and you had to pay penalties, you had to pay the person that's the person that's suing you, then you're limited to what's in that LLC. So if that property is worth $110,000 and you owe 70 on it, then you're limited to paying them out the 40, the assets that you actually have. So it just protects you there. So that's what I'd say on the LLC front, but do not overcomplicate it. Like if you are saying, should I analyze deals or should I get my LLC set up? You should analyze deals. If you're saying, should I start raising money or get my LLC set up? Start raising money. Getting your LLC set up is not going to take much time, and you can get your LLC set up after you get under contract on a property and still close in that LLC. That's it. So, and on top of that, if you had a handful of properties that were under your personal name, you can move them or into an LLC at any time. You don't have to wait for a refinance or for a sale or an action or an activity on the property. You can do it anytime. You just go to title. You can file it yourself. Do a quick claim deed for $6. File with the local county recorder. You're fine, because the only reason you can do that is because you own more than 50% of the LLC and the previous entity, which was you, and you own 100% of you. All right. So you and the LLC. So you got to own more than 50% of that LLC to be able to move it out of that LLC. So if it's a joint partnership, or let's say you got three partners, equal partners, you only own 33% of it. So you couldn't just do that. Like there would be another hoop. You just have to get everybody else to sign off on it. So that's what I'd say on the LLC side of things. All right. Questions look good over there. Okay. Okay. Next question. How can I tell when I should refinance my property? Okay. So in this case, this has multiple different moving factors, moving components of it. But what it comes down to is essentially an opportunity cost. What could you do with that money? So let's just say that, I don't know what your property looks like, but let's just say that it's a $100,000 property. You owe 50 grand on it. And on top of that, let's see, 100K, 50 grand owed. And let's say your mortgage payment is, let's say you set it up here in the last couple of years and it's $500 a month on a property like that. First you've got to define your goals. So what's your goal for refinancing? Refinancing is just a strategy. And this is the same when it comes to real estate in general, is you got to figure out what's your strategy. If your strategy is passive income, then some models of real estate really serve you. Others do not. They're terrible. And if you haven't picked your strategy for investing in real estate yet, go into the school community, go to school.com/rentals2wealth or blakeswanet.com/community, and it'll point you there. And go look at my 7-day fast start and just get started going through that. I go through all of the models, all the major models of investing in real estate, and which one would be right for you. So this model is right for people that want this and not right for people that want this. So if you want passive income, you're going to have something that churns out passive income. If you want active income, that's fine. You're just going to give more time to it. So you got to figure out your goals first, and then figure out what are your constraints, and then decide on strategy. So let's assume that your goal is maximizing cash flow. That's what. Let's do two competing goals. One would be maximizing cash flow, and in another world, your goal on refinancing this property is to buy a boat. All right, that's fine. If you want to maximize cash flow, then you've got to look at, well, how much money am I going to leave in? If I'm going to pull cash out of the property, that's going to increase my principal. But if instead, since I own $50,000 or I only owe $50,000, I could refinance and spread it back over 30 years. And instead of paying $500 a month, now I'll pay $200 a month or whatever it is. In fact, let me run that, and I'll tell you exactly what those numbers are. In fact, I'll just share my screen right here. Boom. All right. So if we come in here and you've got a $100,000 property, well, I guess you would only have, if you bought it turnkey, that'd be $80,000 of a note. And say rates are, let's say, it's $500 payment. Let's just say that you got it a couple years ago at 7.5. So your total payment's $560 right here. All right. If you were to refinance, you only have $50,000 left on it. Let's say you get $50,000. So instead of 560, now we're at 350. And rates right now, you're probably at, I don't know, 6.25. So you're at 300 instead of 550. So that's an extra $250 a month in cash flow. All right. So if you did that, 250 bucks a month of free cash flow just by spreading it out. The one downside to that, though, is you restart all your entire amortization schedule. So you see, of that, a very small portion is going to your principal, and you can continue to write it off. That's fine. But a very small portion is going to your principal. And it's worth noting that for mortgage companies, lenders like that, they make about 80% of their profit in interest. They make in the first 4 years. So a lot of your money is going to them and not to paying down your debt in the first 4 years. So just know that. But $250 a month, you're basically saying, okay, am I willing to give that up in order to get an extra 250 bucks a month? And if you're saying I'm only 250 bucks a month away from being able to retire and quit my W-2 and have some freedom, that can make a lot of sense. The other goal, so that's if your goal is passive income. Let's say your goal is just a cash influx for you to be able to do whatever you want, or you go on a trip or buy another property. If you want a cash influx, you could go do a cash out refinance and pull out, up to 80% LTV. So you could walk away with $300 or $30,000. In that case, your payment, it probably goes down just a little bit because rates now are better than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But it'll be, negligible. So in fact, I'll share my screen. We can walk through that again. So let's say you are at 80 when you started, and you started at 7.5%. So that's 560. And then now you're at even just 6.5. All right. So yeah, you save 60 bucks a month and you get $30,000 in your pocket. All right. So that would be the benefit to doing that. If you were going to go put that into another rental, I think that makes a ton of sense. If you were going to go buy a boat, fine. You just got to know what you're getting into. Like if you're going to take this $30,000 and go put it into a liability, then you're paying the 6.5%. You're basically taking out a 6.5% loan for buying that liability, and that's only going to go down in value over time. So the only reason you would want to do that is because you've already put yourself into a position where you're financially free, and you're just taking money, you're borrowing from the future, and you're putting it into something now. Because this is what's crazy is this money that you would take out, this $30,000 is that's not a taxable event. So you get a $30,000 check, and that's not a taxable event because it's debt. It's a loan. You're going to end up having to pay it back. So you get that $30,000, and on top of that, you write off the interest. So you can take that money, and that's the sweet spot of investing in real estate is over time, someone else is paying down your debt. So instead of owing $100,000, now you only owe 30, and now you have a decision. Well, okay, I could just pay it all off, or have less money, or have more cash flow, or I could just take out a cash out refinance. So, for example, if every house in the U.S. typically doubles around 10 years. You buy a $100,000 house now, in 10 years, it'll be worth 200. 10 years from there, it'll be worth 400. So let's say in 20 years, you got a $400,000 house and you've paid down your debt you're probably, 20 years into a 30-year mortgage. So you're probably around the $30,000 owed. You could take out a cash out refinance for $300,000, and that's tax free. Right. And so if you did that, let's just say you did one door every year for the next 10 years, you put it on 30-year, and they're $100,000 properties. And in 10 years, now they're $200,000 properties, and you've paid it down from, 80, what you started at, to call it 60. That's probably conservative. So now you have a $60,000 debt on a $200,000 property. You could then just go do a cash out refinance for about $100,000. Yeah, about $100,000. And so at that point, you would have $100,000 a year coming in that's tax free, plus all of the other tax hedges. So what that does is that puts you in 10 years, you can retire if you do it right. You just buy a cash flowing property, you let it appreciate, and in 10 years, you can retire. And that was my first aha moment with real estate. Was I said, Like if I just bought one house a year and for 15 years and put it on a 15-year note, it'd be paid off and it would double. And so, whoa, I could retire in 15 years. And then I started saying, okay, how can I squeeze that into to moving faster? So if you just did one door a year for 10 years, you can retire easily. And so you can make that a lot faster if you do it the right way. So that's what it looks like as far as should you or shan't you refinance. The answer is, reasonable people could disagree, but it depends on your goal. If your goal is more cash flow, yeah, that could make a lot of sense. If your goal is to pull money out, um, and use it for something else, yeah, that can make sense. Even if your goal is more cash flow and you say, well, I'm going to do a cash out refinance. So now my cash flow is either the same or $50 a month better here. And then I can take that $30,000 and go buy a rental that's going to cash flow $400 a month. Okay. That's great. You're up, $450 a month. That's a really good situation. So, all right, Justin, your question in the comments. Explain boots on the ground and what they provide you. Also, what you typically pay that person. Great question. Okay, so Justin is actually a part of our mastermind, and so what he's got a little bit of context on the background that others might not have, and so I'll give you a little bit of context of what he's asking for and why it's important, and then I'll answer the question. So when he's talking about boots on the ground, I call this a project manager, but it's a little bit more, that's a more formal title than you really need. That makes it seem like it's really, really, you could have, a middle schooler do this for you if you wanted. The goal here is when you're investing remotely because you picked a market that just has the characteristics that you want cash flow, you go where all the cash flow is, right? You can't make New York City into a cash flow market. It just won't work. So if you're investing in a cash flow market, you need some boots on the ground there because you're not there. You could move there if you want to. You just don't want to. You want to keep your family here. You want to stay in the market that you're in because of the amenities or the schools or whatever. So you're not there. So how do you protect from mistakes, or how do you provide third party oversight and accountability to make sure that the job's being done well, and you don't have your first contractor walk off with 12 grand like mine did? And the answer to that is third party accountability through either like boots on the ground or a project manager. All this person is doing is stopping by the property once or twice a week and taking pictures and videos. So pictures of the property and a full walkthrough and walk around of the property. So they're walking through, they're walking in every single door, every single opening, every single closet, and showing you everything. Then they're sending you that video. Most of the time, it needs to be uploaded to YouTube unlisted and then just sent to you. Just because, if you text a video that's 20 minutes long on an iPhone, it's not going to send. You have to pick, like, I think your max is like 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that. So upload it to YouTube and send that link over. Then you can also store that and log that away in your own documentation for rehab progress. But what you want this person to do is pictures and videos. When they do a video, full walkthrough video and full walk around video, and just call out what they see. So as they're filming, just call it out. They don't even have to have a ton of expertise in real estate or any at all, but they have a brain, So when they're looking, they say, okay, there's some dirt here. You can see down to the foundation here. There's walls over here. There's exposed plumbing here. That all of those things. They'll also probably have a decent understanding of what should have been done from last week to this week. So if it's behind schedule, they'll be like, well, they didn't paint the exterior, but it's been raining here for 5 of the last 7 days, so that might be why. And they just keep going through. But their goal is just to be you. If you were there, what would you be doing? You'd walk around the property and just kind of like make sure everything's in good shape, put eyes on everywhere. That's one. The other practical thing that it does is you want them to go between 9 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. or 1:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. So you don't want them to go at breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Why? Because if you go during those times and you talk to your GC and you say, hey, no one was there. Why wasn't anybody there? They'll just say, oh, they were on break, when they might not have been on break. So you need to have them go at a time when they're not going to be on break, so that if they're not there, you can talk to your GC, your general contractor, and say, hey, why wasn't anybody on my project? And they might say, well, I had to move them to this project just for this day to make sure that we got that one done because we were running behind. And at that point, you just say, look, I can appreciate the challenges that managing multiple crews take. I just don't care about their job. I don't care about their project. I want mine finished. So, You kind of put the screws to them and hold them accountable for people being on their project. Because the only reason why they're putting somebody on that other project is because somebody else is holding them accountable. So if you're not holding them accountable, then you are the flexible project. So that turns a 2 week project into a 6 week project because no one's actually been doing anything on it. So that's what I recommend as far as what they should be doing for you. How much you pay them? You pay them what they think it's worth. Typically, this looks like 500 to 1,500 bucks a project based on the rehab size. But there are some people that'll do this for free. One of the best project managers I ever had. He was a senior at the university, the local university there, and he was only taking 6 credit hours. Really wanted to learn real estate, and his name's Dante. And so I said, I tell you what, you be my boots on the ground. I'll teach you real estate. When we talk and we sync up for 30 minutes about these videos, you ask me whatever questions you want. And he was pumped about it. He was thrilled. Now he's actually in full-time real estate in Florida as an investor and an agent. And so, that was really valuable to him. But I think 500 to 1,500 bucks a month or 1,500 bucks per project based on rehab. If it's a really big rehab and it's going to take a lot longer, 1,500 bucks makes sense. But I would start out at the $500 range, especially for a rehab that is $10,000 or $20,000, because they're going to be shorter. And so all you're asking from them is about once a week, them to go over there for about 5 minutes, maybe 10. But they just need to do a walkthrough, a walk around, send you videos of those, pictures, and then tell you was the crew there or not. That's all they're doing. All right. So Justin, does that help? In fact, Justin, since you're in our mastermind, I'll unmute you and you can ask any questions directly.
That was really the only question I had right
Cool.
now.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Cool. Yeah. But this role is it's a good question because this role is what will protect you from having issues. And you just want to. It also adds just a little bit of awareness of the city too. They might say like, "Oh yeah, just across the street, my buddy's wanting to sell their place," or like, "I know of this old lady that's selling her house." I'm like, "Okay, great. If we end up closing on it, I'll pay you a finder's fee. I'll give you 500 bucks or $1,000 for finding me a good deal." And but it protects you from the rehab side of things. So that's what I'd say on that side of things. All right. How can I tell if my market sucks for real estate investing? Okay. I talked about this a little bit, but it depends on your goals. But I'm going to assume that everybody here, their goal is cash flow first so that they can be work optional, do whatever they want, and have control over their time. And then, appreciation, some tax advantages, wealth creation, stuff like that. But cash flow is a priority. If you, and I'll, before I kind of go through how you can tell, but if you've got 300, 600, $900,000 that you just want to sink into real estate and you're fine, bleeding, say, 800 bucks a month per property, that's great. Then you can invest in an appreciation market like Austin or Portland or Nashville or whatever. But if you want cash flow and you can't just bleed every single month, then you've got to find a cash flowing property. So what I'd say here is, how do you tell if your market's a good cash flowing rental property market, or how do you tell if it's a good real estate investing market? The easiest way to do that is to do what I call the top down rent to price ratio, so top down analysis on a market. So I'll give you a few cheat codes here, and give you some of the secrets from my mastermind. Rent to price ratio, like we want to be able to look at a market and say, like, does that market cash flow? Like, is it full of good deals? The same way that you might say, if you want to go fishing, you're going to say, all right, where should we fish? Okay, well, there should be water, one. So let's just go find water. Does going to your friend's pool help? No, right? But if you go find of a pond that's stocked, or of a barrel, your neighbor has a barrel just full of fish and a shotgun sitting right next to it. Great, just shoot them with the shotgun, right? You got to say, like, what am I actually looking for, and then how can I tell ahead of time? Like, how can I use metrics or some information, some data to be able to tell this? Rent to price ratio is what tells us a property or a market's likelihood to cash flow. So all this is it's monthly rent divided by the home price. And so rent divided by price. So if you've got a property that rents out for $1,000 a month and it's a $100,000 property, 1,000 divided by 100, that's a 1%. That's when you hear 1% rule, 2% rule. Like the 1% rule doesn't exist anymore. Like they're talking about rent to price ratio, they just don't know it. And 1% rule might not exist anymore in that market, but I can tell you with confidence it exists all over the place. I had a student last week who is taking down a 2%er right now. And a lot of people would say that doesn't exist. And the reality is it really does. So the way to do that is the top-down method is go find the market median home price and the market three-bed rent. The median three-bed rent. You can use a bunch of different tools, a bunch of different websites for this. AI is your friend. I like bestplaces.net because it makes it easy to find housing data all in the same area. But before you just go start looking at markets, I want to save you some time. One, almost all of these markets are populations between 50,000 people and 250,000 people. So if you're looking at somewhere with an 800,000 person population, it's not going to work. The other is they never have median home prices above $200,000. Never. So you want to stay below $200,000 for median home price, and usually between 99% of the time between 50 and 250,000 people. Once you find those, heck, you could even just get an entire Excel, a CSV file of all the cities in the United States and their population, and then just filter out anything that's below 50 or above 250. Start there. And then from there, I would take that, I'd feed it into AI, give it to Claude or give it to Perplexity, and just say, hey, give me the three-bed rent and the three-bed or the median home price in these markets. Boom, you're done. If that value is below 0.8, don't even look at it. So that says that value, the median home rent and or median three-bed rent and the median home price divided by each other is 0.8% or lower. It's not a cash flow market. If it's above 0.8, ideally that number is the higher the better. Ideally that number is 1% or above, because what that says is this market, the average regular Joe Blow property in this market is a cash flow deal. So would you rather go somewhere where you can bust your butt and be the Einstein of real estate investing and not come out with a cash flow property, or somewhere where you could be a rookie, complete noob, and you just bump into cash flowing properties because they're all over the place? Well, the latter, of course. So that's what I'd say is find a cash flow market. So if you're looking at your own market, and in fact, let's just do this. Let's say someone in the chat, tell me where you live. Send it over in the chat, and we can look at that market's data, and I'll tell you if that market is a good cash flow market or not. All right, boom. I'll just bring this up. All right, so let's do Dallas to St. George, Utah. All right, bestplaces.net. Share my screen. I'll just show you. Boom. All right, so boom, St. George, Utah. Boom, go here, go to housing stats, and we're looking for two numbers. Median home value, 485. All right, so right out the gate, we know this isn't going to work because it's above 200,000. But let's just take it. So 485, and then the three-bed rent, 1,800. All right, so we've got 1,800 divided by 485. That is a 0.37%. So 0.3% rent to price ratio. That's terrible. All right, that's not going to cash flow at all. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a bad place for investing in real estate, but that's just going to be prohibitive, because in order for this to cash flow, you'd have to rent out a three-bed house for probably about $7,000 a month, and there's just not many people that are going to do that. So, but the opposites, you also true. Like this is $485,000 for $1,800 a month in rent for a three-bed house. Let's just go look at say Dayton, Ohio. Let's go look if you could pay instead on housing stats. Your median rent is $1,210, so not $1,800 but $1,210. but the median house is $100,000. I mean, you're cutting your house cost in, 15 to 20%, but you're only short on rent. Call it I don't know, 30%. All right, so let's look at, say, Jackson, Mississippi here. All right, let's go look at housing. Boom, housing stats. So we're looking at 1240 a month for a three-bedroom house. Let's see. We can look at Abilene, Texas, and just see, how much, what markets. I don't want Austin, Texas. I want Abilene. All righty. And then we'll look at some housing stats. But essentially, all we're doing is, if we find a place that, like, there are some markets out there that instead of 1,800 bucks a month for rent, this one 1,370. But if you could find somewhere that instead of $485,000 for a rental property that rents for 1,800 bucks a month, if you could find somewhere that rented still for 1,800 bucks a month and it costs you $120,000, that's way better. And those are all over the place. So, yeah, I see your comment, Justin. I know the answer, which is, probably why we're working together. But that's it's a good example of how to tell whether your market is good or bad. And there's probably 50 to 100 cash flow markets in the United States. I mean, they're all over the place. You just have to know where to look and how to find them. So that's what I'd say on that side of things. Um, bu- 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 how do I pick the right strategy for me? Seems like everybody that I talk to, uh, is telling me something different. Okay, so this is one of the challenges of being a new investor. Being a new investor, the hardest part is knowing what strategy to do, because when you talk to 10 different people, you get 10 different recommendations or strategies where someone's like, you have to do this. You got to do tax liens, or you got to do wholesaling. You got to be becoming an agent. And the problem with that is they're just recommending what worked for them. And the reality is everybody's situation is different. How much time you've got, how much capital you've got, what your goals are. And you need to start with what your goals are and then filter your options by your constraints. Again, if you want a free course on this, go through my 7-day fast start and I'll go through all the different major models. And then you can pick, like, these are my goals, and filter out, and boom, there's your strategy. But the challenge is resources like Bigger Pockets, YouTube, books, podcasts. Those are all very valuable, but they're valuable for one specific stage. They're valuable for the awareness phase of understanding real estate. Once you get in the implementation or the execution phase, they're not valuable anymore, because in execution you need feedback and you need direction. So if you say, "Hey, I'm trying to do this, but it's not working," you can't call up the author. You can't call up the podcast host and say, "Hey, this isn't working," or "Chapter 6 isn't working." So you don't have the feedback that you need to be able to make adjustments to protect yourself and not lose just tons and tons of money. And what that means is you get a bunch of information, but you're stuck in analysis paralysis. So you find 10 different ways to make tons of money. So you try and do all of them at once, which means you don't make any progress. And the reality is you could filter it down to just one and make progress there, because where you focus is where you're going to grow. That's where growth comes. Growth comes from focus, fundamentally. So you've got to pick one thing to focus on, get really good at it, and then you can add a few other tools to your tool belt. So the way that I recommend doing this is, first define your goals. What do you want real estate to do for you? Then identify your constraints, and usually this is time and money. Every now and again I'll talk to somebody, like, it might be their nationality. Like, I've talked to some people that live overseas and they want to invest in the United States. There's a few different hoops you got to jump through. That is another constraint. Maybe language barrier. Some people might not speak English very well, or I've talked to a couple people that have either hearing disabilities or like that, but usually 99% of the time it's time and money. How much time do you have to put toward this? how much capital do you have? If you've got 3 to 5 hours a week, you can be closing a door every 90 days. I mean, that's pretty reasonable. And that's not a full-time job. You don't have to put 20, 30, 40 hours a week into it, but it's also not trivial. All right. Like no one's putting 3 to 5 hours a week into something unless it's a priority for them. So it needs to be one of your top 3 to 5 priorities. On capital, this can range all over the place. If you, of course, the more money you have, the easier it is, but you don't have to start with any money. There's a bunch of different options for not starting with money. So, I'll tell you, if you want cash flow and you want to be able to get out of your job or maybe just at least have the option, like get work optional, take off the gold handcuffs. There are a few different models that are, I mean, they're just golden. And so, in fact, I'm going over this in the masterclass tomorrow. So if you want to join for the masterclass, I'll send that link over again. But I would recommend sign up and register for that masterclass because I'm going to go through exactly how I built my portfolio, exactly how you can do it too. So you can just copy and paste it and do it yourself. Like I didn't grow up with money. I didn't marry into money. We didn't inherit a ton of money. Like it's simple and reproducible. You can do it. I mean, real estate's the single greatest wealth generator in the history of the world. So feel free to join there, and I'll go more in depth on picking the right method for you. But you got to know that, like, set a timeline. When you start learning about real estate, learn about it for a couple months to be able to define your strategy. But don't go any longer than that because it will take you as long as you let it. Right? If you don't tell, like, if I don't tell my son, hey, clean your room before dinner, then we could be 9 months down the road, and I'll say, "Hey, did you clean your room?" He says, "I'm working on it," because I didn't give him a deadline. And that's the same with strategy. Even selecting your market can take forever if you want. And usually, oftentimes it's analysis paralysis that sets in, which is really just fear or lack of decisiveness. And you just got to make a decision. So, or come to the master class, and I'll teach you. I'll show you exactly what to do, and I can help you. I can tell you exactly what strategy you should be doing to make sure that it meets your goals. So um, you don't want to be like I think of a really good friend of mine who's really smart, and that's another thing is smart people make this mistake. Really smart people invest in real estate in the wrong strategy, and it screws them. But then they have to pivot on the back end so that it's a little bit of like I have to protect my view of myself, or I don't want to say that I did something wrong or whatever. Like I've got a really good friend, a really smart guy who bought property in Austin, and his goal was cash flow. He wanted to get out of the rat race and bought property in Austin, which Austin is a good market to invest in for certain strategies. Cash flow is not one of them. And so then he ended up negative $900 a month on this property. So he pivoted and he was like, well, I'm investing for appreciation. What he's doing is he's letting his constraints dictate his strategy, which is a terrible idea, or dictate his goals rather, which is a terrible idea. So now instead of trying to get out of the rat race, he's saying, okay, well, how can earn more, work more, spend less time with family, earn more and work more so that I can get more down payments to buy more property so I can be more negative in cash flow so that then I can invest for it's all, broken. So that's what you want to avoid. So feel free to join for the masterclass tomorrow. I'll go over that. But I would say give yourself a timeline. Give yourself a timeline to pick a strategy. And right out the gate, if you don't want to be working full time on this, you only have a few options. And then if you want passive income, it's either the Burr model or long-term rentals. And really, the question between those two is how much money you're starting with. If you're starting more with more than 50K, I'd say buy a couple turnkeys. But even then, you got to find a scalable model like the Burr model. So, um, okay, cool. All right. Boom. All right. What are the risks of real estate? Um, it's interesting because the people that submit these questions, I don't know much about them. I don't have much context unless they're in the mastermind or I've chatted with them personally. But I think probably the person submitting this is an analysis paralysis and a risk averse person. So if this is you and you're on the call, give me some context. Tell me I'm right, I'm wrong, whatever. But I think the risks of real estate, one, are more well understood, but two, I think they're overblown. And I'll tell you why. And the primary reason is They are, Justin has a beautiful question. What are the risks of not investing? Right? Like you could ask the same question about going to the gym. What's the risks of going to the gym? Well, you could drop the barbell on your face, knock out all your teeth. You could pull a hammy. You could trip and fall. You could slip on the mopped floor and all that stuff. But the risks of not going means you're not going to get healthier. You're not going to move better. You're not going to have the mobility. You're not going to be able to be the parent that you want, and all of those things. So the question of what are the risks of real estate is a helpful question, but I would look at it on both ways, right? Like, what if it goes wrong, and what if it goes right? Because that's what you're asking. What if it goes wrong? What if it goes right? And this will probably be our last question. So if you've got any urgent questions and you want to toss them in the chat, let me know. But um, when we talk about risk, risk is a function of two things, two and only two things. Um, what happens? Like you're asking, what happens if it goes wrong? And you're asking a question of risk. Risk is a function of two things. One is the cost of it going wrong, and two is the likelihood that it goes wrong. So the pain of it going wrong and the probability. So how much does it hurt if it goes wrong, and what's the probability that's going to happen? A good example for this or illustration here is like if you go fly on a plane, what if it goes wrong? Well, you're kind of screwed, right? The cost of it, the pain of it is you die. Then why do people do it? Right? If the cost is so significant, why do people do it? Why do people fly on planes? Well, it's because the chances are like 1 in 11 million. It's something like 500 times safer than driving. So that's why they do it. And on the same example, you go to dinner at your favorite place and you say, should I get my usual or should I try something else? The reason why you try something else is because you know the cost. The cost is maybe it's $16 to get this dinner. And the likelihood, the probability is if I don't like it, it's not really that big a deal. It's probably going to be fine. Like if I don't like it, whatever. I won't like it, but it's just $16, right? So you try it. That's a low risk situation too. So what we want to do is find a situation that would be low likelihood to happen and then put a number to it. So for the risks of real estate, you could say, well, on its most practical level, what if home prices go down? Okay, well, if home prices go down, how much could they go down? And this would be a question of timing the market. I'm going to start in 2 years. I'm going to start when the market hits the bottom. And the reality is, you're just not. You're not going to time the market because even if you had the expertise and the knowledge to be able to know exactly where the bottom of the market was, you wouldn't have the courage to pull the trigger. You just wouldn't. Almost all people, like you look at COVID. When COVID happened, the market tanked. I mean, the stock market plummeted. So if you knew exactly when the bottom was, you would have put all your money. You would have taken out high interest loans to put all your money in at the bottom because then it popped back up like a couple weeks later. All right, and you could have made tons and tons and tons of money, but you don't have the expertise and you don't have the guts to actually the courage to actually do that. And so timing it to hit the bottom of the market is silly for a number of different reasons as well, just practically. But you say like, well, what if it goes wrong? Well, the worst case scenario, let's say, would be like 08, 09, and home prices went down like 25% there. Well, if you buy a property that's a Burr property and you're all in, or the property's now worth $100,000, but you're all in at 70, you bought it for 50, put 20 into it, you're at 80% or you're at 70% LTV, and it went down 20 to 25%, you still have a profitable property, and because it cash flows, you just keep it in perpetuity. The other thing to note is cash flow, or like the rent on a property, doesn't go down. Historically, in the United States, it doesn't go down. It just keeps going up and to the right. So as long as you have a strategy that you can hold on to the property, you're golden. The problem in 08, 09 with individuals was they bought properties that were terrible properties, and then they were loaned like 120% of LTV essentially. So they were given for $100,000 property, you walked away at closing with 20 grand, and now you had a note for $120,000, but the property is worth 100. Then on top of that, properties went down 10%, and they were just underwater. So the risk there is much smaller than you think. And if the thing that I love about the Burr model is it's so risk protected. Like take this for example, if you let's say you bought $100,000 property using the Burr model. There are two things that could go wrong, two variables that could change. So when you buy it, the rehab could go over, or your ARV could be off. Right, your future value estimation could be off. So let's say you buy it at 50, you put 20 into it, now it's worth 100. In that case, you made $30,000 and you can choose to sell it or refinance, whatever. But those two numbers could change. So if we say, well, what's the magnitude of what's the pain? How much would it hurt if it goes wrong? And what's the likelihood? Let's pick something that's very unlikely to go wrong. Let's say that your rehab's 50% over. If you're doing any level of due diligence, that's not going to happen. But 50% over on a $20,000 budget is $30,000. So, or it's $10,000. So the total rehab would be $30,000. So now you're all in at $80,000, but you still have a $100,000 property. You can still refinance, make cash flow, or you could sell it and just make a little bit less on the top end. But that's pretty unlikely. But you might say, well, Blake, that's not unlikely enough. Okay, let's make it more unlikely. Let's say that your ARV, in addition to that, your ARV is also wrong, and you're off by 10%. And if you're doing it the right way, you should not be off by 10%. That's a lot. So let's say that you have great comps and or you have great comps, but you don't know how to analyze the property, so you don't really know how to find those comps, and you're off by 10%. Now you got a $90,000 property, and you're all in at $80,000. Your answer is just to sell, and you probably walk away with $3,000, $5,000 after sales costs, right? And that's for a failure. That's a failed burr that you made $3,000 off of, $5,000. I mean, if I made 3 to 5 grand off of every failure I've ever had, I'd be a gazillionaire at this point. So that's how protected the Burr model is. It's the most risk protected model of any real estate investing model that gets you passive income. So that's what I'd say there. Then the other side of this question is what Justin asked, like, what if it goes right? If you were to just buy one Burr deal a year, each Burr deal, let's say it's $100,000 property, you're going to make about $55,000 on that in the first year, because you have your initial equity that you made by increasing the value of it was going to be $35,000. Then you've got the cash flow on it, you got the debt pay down, and you got your tax advantages. It's going to be about $55,000. So $55,000 there, and that's just one deal. No money out of your own pocket. One deal. If you know what you're doing, you can get a deal every 90 days. So that you're looking at over $200,000. It's probably closer to $250,000, everything included, by getting one deal every 90 days. That's $250,000. In 4 years, you're a millionaire. And that's conservative, because everybody knows once you've done something a few times, you get better at it. When you started riding a bike, it was hard the first time. The next time it was easier, and then it got easier and easier to the point where you don't even think about it anymore. So that's the risk of not doing it, is you lose out on the greatest wealth generator in the history of the world. And home prices are only going to keep going up. So you're going to look back and say, like, oh, I wish I had done that 2 years ago. I wish I had done that 5 years ago. And you'd be right. You should have. When you could instead, the 2030 version of you look back and say, man, I'm so glad I bought those rentals and I'm retired now, or I'm work optional now, and I can quit my job and care for my parents and my aging family members, or I can lead the nonprofit, or I can spend more time at home, or I can keep doing the same thing, but just know I can leave whenever I want. So, yeah. Justin says, my lender has said that he doesn't know why he hasn't done this. Yeah. You'll see a lot of people in real estate that are vendors in real estate, like they're lenders or they're contractors or they're whatever. They're like, man, I see other people making all this money, but why haven't I done it? Like, I really need to just do that. And it's because they're scared. Fear has a big component in it, because they overestimate the risk and they don't properly evaluate what's the potential benefit of this happening. So all that to say, if you want to learn how to do that for yourself, come join us at the masterclass tomorrow. I'll drop that link in here again. Register for that. I've got a few gifts that I'm going to give away to everybody on the masterclass, and it's free. No, you don't have to do anything. Don't have to pay anything. I'm not going to ask you for an arm and a leg, or either, really. But join us for that masterclass. That's tomorrow at noon Central, same time. We'll get you taken care of. But other than that, we'll go ahead and we're past the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get out of here. So as you guys have additional questions, send it over to the community. Go to blakeswanee.com/community. Send those questions over there, and we'll get you taken care of. Other than that, we'll see you next time. All right. Happy investing.